2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Guys!
In a row?
Welcome back to Nine Guys Dynasty Football. I am Jamie G, proud owner of a Josh Allen game-worn sock. I take a good whiff every time I head to court, and it hasn't let me down yet, or any of my clients. As usual, I'm here at Magnum Mills to talk Dynasty Football. The first week of rookie drafts is in the books, and surprise, surprise, we got some thoughts. Mills, hurry up, get us through the whatnot so we can talk about the rookies, please, and thank you. Just make with it.
Oh, so like a Spaceballs wedding style here at the end. Like, do you? That's easily my favorite style of wedding. I really love that style. Nice and short, to the point. We hope you will love this episode of Nine Guys Dynasty Football. We are presented by Seize the Gap Fantasy Football. You can find our content wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube. Find us on social media at Seize the Gap FF and on the web at seizethegapff.com. Very simple and easy to remember, just like the flaps. FLAPS. Follow, like, and please subscribe. If you had fun, got to hit that thumb, please, and thank you.
Before we get into the rooks, and we got a bunch of rookies to discuss, we got a couple of noteworthy guys we got to break down. Go ahead, play the sad music, because we're starting off with a retirement, and it ain't Roger Murtaugh.
No, that dude has been 10 days from retirement since the 80s somehow. It's amazing. Do you realize that I believe in the original Lethal Weapon, Danny Glover was only 42 years old, I believe?
Wow.
Like, I don't really feel like he was of retirement age, but shout out to, he looked basically the same for about, 15 years of Lethal Weapon. So that was great for Danny Glover. No, he is still out there and kicking. It's Derek Carr is going to retire. We heard he had some shoulder issues before the draft. Obviously, they took Tyler Show in the early second there. He retires. They kind of cut a deal in terms of the salary cap. He got to keep the $10 million roster bonus, but he forgoes $30 million in guaranteed salary for this year. It is what it is. I just wonder what you do with the Saints from here. Obviously, you have Chris Olave and Alvin Kamara. You got the kid Neal down there. They signed Brandon Cooks. You got a couple of kind of random ancillary players. I'm still waiting for Kendre Miller to happen. I hope this winds up being a good thing for the Saints long term. It forces them into a reboot. They take some of their cap medicine. They maybe get a quarterback with a little bit more ceiling, but they could also be decent enough to win 8 or 9 games and be in the hunt here, especially if Atlanta doesn't take a step forward. Tampa Bay takes a step back. From a dynasty standpoint, this certainly can't help. I almost wonder if Alvin Kamara would ask out. Chris Olave has the concussion issue, so you have to worry about that. This feels like a case like we have in Cleveland where you could see multiple quarterbacks making starts here. Jamie G, what do you think, man? Can you even spin this as a net neutral for the dynasty prospects of the players on the Saints, or is this just got to be bad news all the way around? Even though it's not like Derek Carr is extremely above average, but sometimes even just having average is better than, street level.
Well, if you remember back, I know it seems like a million years ago, but the first couple of weeks of the season last year, I think the Saints offense was the highest scoring,
They're
most
dynamite for like 3 games.
Yeah, it was pretty remarkable. Now, obviously, they got a new sheriff in town with Kellen Moore and his inability to close his mouth. It's so weird. He just can't close his mouth. I think that there's talent on this team, and they had a bunch of injuries last year. Derek Carr, while not great, I put him I guess he's probably like a tier under the Kirk Cousins of the world. He's serviceable enough when there's good playmakers around him where from a fantasy standpoint, we're not necessarily thinking they're going to win games, but I think there could be enough production there. It's probably slightly under net neutral to answer your question, but I do think that it was probably better with than now without. But we'll see what they do. I mean, I guess you could consider Aaron Rodgers now. I mean, he technically didn't go to Pittsburgh yet. I mean, if I'm him, I'd probably rather play in the dome with the weapons that they have other than outside with DK Metcalf. So I don't know. I guess that could change things a little bit too.
Yeah, I would feel a little bit better if it wasn't like, Alvin Kamara, obviously at the very tail end of his prime, if not past it, and Olave dealing with the concussion issues. You wonder what the motivation is if they're 0-4, 0-5, and they're obviously starting a quarterback who won't be starting for them long term. You just kind of worry where that leads. Like if you had to buy into one of the, let's call them shittier offenses to be nice, with a quarterback questions, you got the Steelers, the Browns, the Saints. So which one of those three would you most want to invest in from a dynasty standpoint? Even if it's a little rough this year, which one of them do you think has the best kind of long-term upside here? I'm actually kind of maybe leaning Cleveland a little bit, but I don't know. I'm not really wild about any of the three, to be perfectly honest with you.
I'm not wild about any of the three either. We saw the Steelers be able to, get some form of success. I don't really love it with the offensive coordinator and kind of what they have going on there. The Browns are just so hard. I actually think, if gun to my head, I think I'm going Saints. I think there's enough there with, you squint hard enough here. You got Rashid Shaheed, they got a pretty good tight end and Johnson. I mean, there's pieces. I think I'm probably going there. I mean, they play in a pretty weak division. It's
I'll give you the division. That is definitely a thing. They've done some work on their offensive line. I don't mind that. Just Cleveland, I like that they drafted a bunch of young skill position players I really like this year.
that's
We saw
true.
Jerry Judy take a step forward. He's still only like 24, 25 years old. David
I'm a
Njoku's
big
only
Judkins
27,
fan. They've got
28.
Yeah,
So I think that just long term, I like this draft class and a little bit of the existing talent more. If you told me Ole was perfectly healthy and he's going to be fine going forward, that would help a lot. But I mean, he's in like a Tua level of concussions at this point. It's 4 or 5. It's really bad. Like he is just one wrong hit away, I think, from maybe having to call it a career. And again, Kamara, just we've seen with running backs of that age, could fall off at any time. And Shaheed Johnson, those are nice supporting kind of guys, but I just don't know that they're really the kind of fantasy assets I'm looking for. In Pittsburgh, yeah, they've also done work on the line, but I mean, their best long term offensive player is DK Metcalf. Again, 27, 28, nothing wrong with that. But there's no real long-term solution at quarterback. Fryermuth's never taken a step forward. You're looking at like Roman Wilson and Calvin Austin. So unfortunately, that's the way it works. It seems like they're all graveyards. My guess is one of them will have something unexpectedly good happen, and then one will be terrible. One will probably be in the middle. I'm just not ready to call which one. And another piece of little sad news, but not necessarily unexpected. The Panthers put sophomore running back Jonathan Brooks on the pup list. He will not play at all this season after re-tearing his ACL in limited action last year. It sucks. I have still hopes for the young man, long term here, but from a dynasty standpoint, you have to be in a spot where, yeah, if you could tuck him on IR now, or you have a really deep roster or something, go for it. If you're a rebuilding team, nice to stash on there. But I think the main impact is this at least gives a path to relevance for both Trevor Etienne and Rico Dodal, especially if Chuba Hubbard's a little bit slow to come around here after an injury of his own. If Brooks had somehow come back midseason, that really could have complicated things. At least this clears it up a little bit. Right now, it's not as clear as mud. It's just as clear as like dust.
yeah, it's yeah, I'd say it's as clear as spider webs at least. But I hate it for I really like the player. Was excited to see what he could do in the NFL. It sucks that this is going to be the situation, but it is a crowded backfield. We know they paid Chuba Hubbard. I know he's coming off an injury, but all signs point to him being good to go for the start of the season here. And then they drafted ETN and so there's do they still have Miles Sanders?
No, Sanders is on the Cowboys now. He is
Okay, Sanders on the
complicating that
Cowboys.
one
Okay.
over there.
But they've got, a little bit of a logjam there. So I guess it clears it up a little bit. Excited to see, what ETN can do. Chuba Hubbard was picking up steam here, towards the end of the season. So we'll see. But yeah, I feel bad for Jonathan Brooks, but I guess it does paint a little bit of a clearer picture on what was a really crowded backfield.
Yeah, ETN probably gets it. This probably moves up maybe a couple spots in ADP in your rookie drafts. And, Dodal, another dude who had some success down the stretch last year with the Cowboys, signed a pretty cheap deal there. It looks like probably some sort of committee, but they paid Chuba Hubbard. So assuming he's healthy, he is probably in the lead. And let's just stay on the Cowboys here. They did pull the trigger. We always make fun of Jerry Jones. He's always got all these deals happening. Finally pulled one off here. They traded for George Pickens from the Steelers, basically a third round pick at the end of the day. Don't think they're going to re-sign him right now, so he's going to kind of have to earn it here in his walk year, scheduled to be a free agent next year. Obviously, they could franchise him if necessary. I'm just curious as the overall impact. I would say before the trade, Pickens was worth somewhere in the range of roughly, call it a mid to late first pick. these 2025, now will probably be 2026 in your one quarterback leagues. Probably same thing in Superflex, maybe a little bit more of a late first in Superflex. I don't know that that changes too much going to the Cowboys. I like the offensive environment a lot better, but he's also going to have to contend with CeeDee Lamb on another team that I think is going to try to establish the run again. What do you think, Jamie G? George Pickens' value here in Dynasty after moving to the Cowboys, up, down, neutral?
It's probably up slightly. On one hand, when we was with Pittsburgh, it was kind of like all you had, and we've had those games where they had even moderately good quarterback play where he could kind of go off and just kind of get the volume. Now he's going to have multiple mouths that have to be fed, most notably CeeDee Lamb, but he should see a bunch of single coverage. And he's going to have probably the best quarterback he's played with in a while, so maybe ever.
Probably
Since
ever, yeah.
probably ever since he's been with Pittsburgh. So I think that it's probably a bump up, but not dramatically. You also get the motivation of kind of finding a year that prove it type year. So I'm going to say it's up. I don't know that it's through the roof up, but I'm going to say it's higher than net neutral.
It's funny, if he was being traded away from almost any other team, I would be in that same place. But just the history of skill position players that the Steelers wash their hands of is not good. Like the only one I
No.
really remember was like Emmanuel Sanders, and he walked as a free agent. And that wasn't a situation where they traded him away or parted on bad terms or anything like that. They just couldn't really afford to pay him, and he wanted to have a lot of success in Denver. It's just such a sketchy track record that it worries me just a pinch. I do like the talent. This is a spot where now I own a lot of George Pickens. I'm considering trying to cash out a little bit here. Maybe cash out half my shares, and then if he hits, I can figure out what I want to do. But that way, if it does blow up a little bit, I have at least hedged my bets, cashing out while he's got a little bit of hype. There's probably a little bit of steam right now, probably not going to be so much so in a couple of weeks when we hit the dead zone in June. So just something to think about. What do you think the impact is on CeeDee Lamb in terms of his dynasty value, fantasy production, same kind of thing, up, down, or neutral? Again, I would say probably pretty neutral. He's going to lose some targets, but like you said, more single coverage, going to get more favorable looks. So I think it probably all balances itself out in the long run. Maybe a little bit more touchdown upside if the offense improves. So I would say maybe just kind of the same thing you said about Pickens, pretty neutral and maybe a slight bump up. What do you think this does for CD?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, he's played with, other decent wide receivers next to him before, and we've seen him have success. So I think it's certainly possible that, I don't know that he'll ever have the level of success he had in his contract year. I mean, that was pretty remarkable year for him, but I think he can get close to that on a consistent level, provided the offense stays healthy and they kind of give him the ball. So I think it's net neutral, maybe just a slight bump. I think it's not a bad thing for him at all.
How about over on Pittsburgh? The quarterback situation is unclear. I think it's pretty obvious that this is a negative for whoever the Pittsburgh quarterback ends up being because they traded Pickens and didn't replace him, and probably a positive for the Cowboys because he's stepping in for an aging Brandon Cooks, Jalen Tolbert, Jonathan Mingo. So I'd say that's pretty obvious. But how about DK Metcalf? He is now the only game in town in Pittsburgh, so kind of the reverse of CD. Probably going to get more targets. We don't know about the quality of those targets. He might see a lot of double coverage. What do you think this does for Metcalf? Kind of up, down, or neutral? Again, I'd say probably the same thing, slightly up just from the volume. But if this offense is bad, it's definitely going to hurt his touchdown upside.
Probably down some just because teams are gonna, you know, basically take him away and say, prove that you can pass the ball someplace else. And, DK Metcalf is the type of player that gets frustrated really easily. I could see him getting really frustrated there and by not getting the ball because they're taking him away. And I just don't know that they have anything else now to where teams can't just take him away. And I think it's probably down. At least if Pickens was there, there'd be two legitimate receivers. It'd be hard to just take him away for an entire game. Now I think you can. I mean, yeah, there's Muth and he can move the chains here and there, but there's not a legitimate threat here outside of DK Metcalf. So I think it's certainly down.
What's wild is the whole point was they traded for Metcalf because they've been looking for this player to pair with Pickens, right? So they have multiple weapons. It was going to be Brandon Ayuk before he re-signed. Now they go to Metcalf. By trading Metcalf, everything you just described describes exactly the situation with Pickens last year, right down to him getting emotional, except now he's way older and more expensive, and they paid a second round pick to trade for him. Like they basically recreated their existing situation, but slightly older and more expensive.
Yeah.
Like, what did
it's
they
not
really
great.
accomplish, right? You know what I mean? It was a very lateral move. It just doesn't quite do it for me, I guess. I mean, okay, Pittsburgh, we trust that again that Mike Tomlin not putting up the losing record, but it would be surprising, I think, if there's a lot of functional fantasy assets on that offense next year. I think you'll have players. Yeah, obviously, Metcalf will be drafted pretty high. Both the running backs probably will be, but my guess is they really spread it around, and if they don't score a lot of touchdowns, there's just not a lot of fantasy goodness, man. There's only so much you can do with yards. You need to score Mr. Touchdown.
Yeah, you certainly do. No question about it. Mills, let's dive into the results from our first rookie drafts of the season. Where do you want to start here?
Let's maybe just go through the positions and know kind of anything that maybe stuck out. We'll start with quarterback in one QB league, so mostly over on the FFPC here. I had the majority of my drafts there. Did have a couple on MFL and another random website or two, but majority of my drafts were on FFPC, as I think this is the case for Jamie G. Over there, Cam Ward had an ADP of 307 in one quarterback leagues, lasted into the sixth round in some leagues. I wound up with a few shares of him. Totally did not intend to do it, but there's a one QB league where I had Justin Herbert as my only quarterback. I'm sitting there in round four, round five, I forget which one it was, and Cam Ward is there. At that point, I was like, you know what? I'll take the plunge with him. I don't know that he has the ceiling you're looking for here, but in the FFPC, there's a good chance your fourth, fifth round pick isn't even going to make the roster anyways. At that point, I'd maybe rather take a chance on him over someone like Matthew Stafford, because again, you'll probably get a shot at him on waivers if you needed to. What do you think, Jamie G? Are you a fan of taking a shot on Cameron Ward when falling into that kind of fourth-ish round area, or would you still rather go with a veteran because it's a one quarterback league and you'd rather have some steady production as a backup?
I think I'd probably take the shot on him. Look, garbage points count too, and we know he's going to play. There's going to be there's going to be opportunity there. I think I'd rather have him here with the upside because the reality is if he hits, and he's doing well, all of a sudden now I have way more value than I would have in a veteran kind of backup. So I think I'm going with Cam Ward.
You're hoping for CJ Stroud, right? He necessarily wasn't the greatest fantasy quarterback his rookie year, but he came in pretty quickly, ascended, and gained a lot of value at that point. That was probably the highest point of his value. He's still very valuable now in Dynasty, but he's dipped a little bit. But if Ward comes out hot, especially if he's easily your quarterback too, if you got yourself a Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, or something like that, now you got yourself a trade chip, even in one QB. He's never going to give you the impact that Jaden Daniels had last year, but I guess it's not insane that he could have, somewhere in the vicinity of the impact that Caleb Williams ends up having. Obviously, Williams has a much better environment around him right now, but perhaps the Titans can, bulk that up over the next couple of years here. In super flex leagues, it went kind of how we thought. The Ward on average went at the 105, Dart at the 201, Milrow at the 209. Now that we know what they cost, you have a preference between the three. You had to pay a fairly early pick in Superflex for Ward, early second for Dart, late second for Milrow. Do you have a preference between the three at those price points? I mean, it might depend on what you need a little bit too. Obviously, if you need a immediate impact, Ward's probably your guy. But
I think I'm probably going with Dart. And because it's a better price, he's going to start to I know Russell Wilson's there, but I think Dart is going to play this season. Let's just put it that way. And it wouldn't completely shock me if he earns the starting job by the end of training camp. It really wouldn't. At least by the end of preseason. So I think I'm going there. Milrow is so intriguing. It's a bit rich for me. If I could have got him in the threes, I probably would have said for that price, that's the best because I think if he hits, he has the biggest upside out of everybody. But I think I'm going Dart at that price point.
I am probably with you here, especially if this was a spot if you needed a quarterback and you could have gotten Ward at 105. The value of what you could have gotten by trading back from the 105 to the 201 and picking up Dart is kind of just that plus Dart, I think, is more than Ward probably. They have similar upside. You have to like what the Giants have, at least with Neighbors. You got a couple of prospects at running back. You got your left tackle. I like Theo Johnson at tight end. I mean, even Slayton's not terrible as a second wide receiver. Wan'Dale Robinson. That's not too shabby. Dable's a decent offensive mind. So I think that's probably about right. I think that's the sweet spot where you're taking more risk than you are with Ward, but there's a lot more chance of immediate reward than there is with Mill Milroe, at least in terms of full games. Milroe might run a couple of wildcat plays and occasionally be able to, score you 10 random fantasy points here or something like that while Dart's riding the bench. But overall, I think Dart has a much quicker path to being a full-time starting quarterback. So I think I would probably be right there with you, splitting the difference there, going with Dart at the 201. And Milroe, it was kind of the pivot point for the draft in Superflex because as soon as he went, then you'd see Tyler Show go, you'd see Howard go, then all of a sudden the mini quarterback run would happen in the third, and if Milroe fell to the third, then the quarterback run would kind of go to the fourth. So you were playing a little bit of chicken if you wanted to jump into that area. Luckily, it worked out for me for the most part, but really, I didn't have a ton of interest in the quarterback class after Milroe. And then at running back, we had a pretty clear top three. You had Genty, you had Hampton, you had Henderson, and then you had kind of a mini tier with Judkins and RJ Harvey. I think that's more or less how we thought it was going to go. So, and then over on the FFPC in one quarterback leagues, you had three running backs with ADPs in the second round. Cam Scatterbo for the Giants at 202, Bashal Tootin at 205 for the Jaguars, and Jaden Blue 210 for the Cowboys. Same kind of thing here, Jamie G. At this price point, do you have a preference between the three? I scooped up shares of all of them. I got multiple of them in some leagues. I will say I went a little bit harder at Tutton in leagues where I had ETN or Bigsby trying to maybe capture a little bit of that backfield. Tons of blue at the end of the second. So I guess I might go blue just based on the ADP because he was a little bit cheaper there. It was very tough to get from the end of the second to the early second, but I like all three of these backs. What's your preference between them at those draft price points throughout the second round?
Yeah, I love Blue there, and I think he's got a legitimate shot here to kind of be the guy. But I'm actually going to go Cam Scatterbo. I really I think he also has a very clear path, and knowing what that offense is going to have to do, whether it has Russell Wilson or a rookie in Jackson Dart. I just think they're gonna run the football, man, and Cam Scatterbo to me is gonna get a lot of volume. He had a historic rookie season. Big fan, love the name. I'm gonna go there, but I think Jaden Blue is also a really good value there as well.
Yeah, I'd say Scadaboo is my favorite talent of the group, but he was going right there when you'd also get that top tier of wide receivers. So I really liked being able to get one of those guys in there and then dropping back or, going up into that mid to late second and being able to get one of these three still. So that's why I maybe missed out on him a little bit. And I think if you go with one of the other two, it gives you a little more optionality. But I would say, yeah, in a vacuum, he's my favorite. But 202 was pretty, it was tough to move up in the draft, especially kind of in that range. So that's why I didn't wind up with enough of him probably. And then you had kind of a third tier of running backs that went in the third round. You had DJ Giddens, who went to the Colts, his ADP 309, Jarquez Hunter to the Rams, ADP 311, and Brashard Smith to the Chiefs, ADP 312. Same thing, very tightly grouped here, all late third round. Which of these three backs do you prefer in Dynasty?
I'm actually going to go Brashard Smith here, just because again we saw last year when Isaiah Pacheco goes down, they go they go with the old man there and Kareem Hunt. I don't know that there's a full blown commitment to any one running back in that offense, and I just think he's going to get legitimate opportunities there. So I'm going to go there. It's 3 point, bottom of the third. However, I will say Jarquez Hunter at 3.11 to the Rams. I hate it for all the other shares I have of Rams running backs, but it wouldn't, mostly Blake Corum, but it wouldn't surprise me at all for him to get some looks too. So I think those two are really good, but I'll probably eck out my top pick with Brashard Smith.
I think the only issue with him was the seventh round draft capital, but this is a case where the running back class was so deep. In a different draft, he probably would have been a fourth or fifth round pick. There's just so many backs in the draft. There's already been some positive buzz about him out of minicamp. So I like where you're going there. Giddens is a guy you kind of hate to draft in this scenario this high because he's right now strictly a handcuff for Jonathan Taylor. And I still have me some Jonathan Taylor shares, but that's every time he gets tackled, I worry. And it feels like every year he's going to have an ankle. And when that happens, I think Giddens is going to be plug and play. Again, long term, he's still looking. The best case scenario for him would probably be to become a starter next year. More realistically, probably 2027. So you got to have some patience there, but definitely the priority, I think, if you owned Jonathan Taylor. And as far as the Rams now, so now you have Hunter, Corum, Kyron Williams. Which one do you think scores the most fantasy points this year? I'd say there's about a 50% chance that it's Williams, like 30% Hunter, 20% Corum. What do you think? How would you kind of allocate the chances between the three of being the leading fantasy scorer for the Rams this year?
Yeah, I'm gonna go 60 on Williams. I'm gonna go 20 on Hunter, and I'm splitting the baby and 20 on Corum. I think it's equal opportunity there between them. So I wish there was a better answer.
I think a lot of it will depend on Kyron Williams' willingness to play ball on a contract. If he plays hardball, I think they'll start to phase him out. Wouldn't surprise me. And the one thing you still have going for you with Corum is that's kind of what happened to Kyron Williams. He was drafted, kind of forgotten about. There was an opportunity. Everyone thought they were going to go with a rookie, and they wound up going with him. So if history repeats himself, he could find himself, getting Wally pipped this time, so to speak. Let's move over to the wide receivers. Once again, a top tier, two players here. You had Tetairoa McMillan, 104, Travis Hunter, 105. So pretty much what we expected. They were going to be going right there in that top group with the top three running backs. After that, again, a pretty clear tier of three wide receivers. Igbuka went to Tampa Bay, 111 ADP. Matthew Golden went to Green Bay, 112 ADP. Luther Burden went to Chicago, 201 ADP. So all three of them right there, late first, early second. I can honestly say I do not have a preference between the three, and I would usually look for, do I have a quarterback? Do I have other guys on that team if I had to make a choice? And a lot of times it would even come down to, all right, who do I have shares with? At a certain point, it's like, all right, I've taken Burden in the last three drafts. I'm going to take Golden in this one because honestly, I am coin flipping between all three of these guys. It's really tough for me to have a preference, especially with almost identical ADPs. How about yourself? Do you have any kind of lean here now, knowing that these are all the exact same price? It'd be one thing if one was significantly cheaper or more expensive, but costing the exact same thing. Do you have a preference?
Yeah, I'm with you. I think you can kind of just throw a dart here. I guess I would probably go Emeka Egbuka just because I like the situation more, and we saw rookies have success there early last year. So I think that's probably where I'm going. In Mills, I do need to correct you. You know I love some thirds. It's Luther Burden the third.
Oh, yes, he is the third. I got to put the proper emphasis on it. I forgot about that. Yeah, I'd say Igbuka feels he is the safest. He might have the longest runway because of the presence of Evans and Godwin, but I really liked him coming out. Of all of them, I think he is the least what I'm worried about as far as bust potential. But you've also got McMillan over there, K. Dot, and so it just might take a minute. You might have to be a little bit patient with him, but overall, I think he's probably the best combination of floor and ceiling of the three. And then you have a mini tier with Jaden Higgins, went to Houston, ADP 204. Trey Harris went to the Chargers, ADP 205. I like getting exposure to the Chargers here. I know they brought Mike Williams back, but there's still a ton of opportunity behind McConkey. But I have been falling in love with Jaden Higgins. We know the Texans are hungry for targets. They lost Diggs and Dell. Nico Collins has struggled with injuries. I'm about it. I could pretty much put him up in that tier. I think with Igbuka, Golden, and Burden at this point. Do you have a preference between Higgins and Harris, the H's?
Not really. Probably Higgins. I just love his size and mostly because I've got a lot of CJ Stroud and Nico Collins shares. I like his size. I like the player. Again, they're so close in value here, but I think I'm gonna go Higgins just given all the other components of it, where the landing spot.
Yeah, I'll definitely take the Chargers line over the Texans, but at least the Texans tried. I think they've turned over four of the five positions. We'll see if that wound up being the right move or not. And then there was kind of one more mini tier wide receivers who went between the late second to mid third. You had Kyle Williams of the Patriots, went 211 on average. Jalen Noel, another Texans receiver at 302, and Jalen Royals to the Chiefs, 307. I think I am probably going with Royals of the three. I just think, much like the backfield there for the Chiefs, there's a lot of opportunity. Xavier Worthy's a fine player, but he's not really a full-time prototypical number one. Rashee Rice is probably going to face a suspension coming off a big injury. Travis Kelce's old, and it's almost crickets behind that, unless you think something's finally going to happen with Sky Moore or Juju's really going to do it or something like that. So I think there's a ton of opportunity here. He looks like he'll be a good fit there. Might take a little bit to get going, but I love that kind of value in the late third. How about yourself? Preference between Kyle Williams, Jalen Noel, and Jalen Royals?
Yeah, I think it's probably Kyle Williams for me. I love the talent here. I really like the situation. With Drake May kind of being able to stretch the field here, the quickness. There's not a ton there outside of Diggs. I know they've got a bunch of just kind of like bodies, but they drafted him and spent some capital. First, draft of the new coaching regime. I expect them to get opportunities. I think I'm going there first, and then I'm probably going, Jalen Royals for all the reasons you said second.
I'm just so worried, man. The Patriots have destroyed so many wide receivers.
Oh
I
yeah.
am legitimately like, I am just, I can't. It's so tough. Like, I'd let myself buy back in on Polk last year after getting burned by Tyquan Thornton and before that getting burned by N'Keal Harry and many, many others that I am forgetting about right now. But it has been where receivers go to die pretty much. I mean, there was a reason, Julian Edelman kept doing it until he couldn't really walk anymore. It's because they didn't have anybody else and they can't draft wide receivers apparently. So, uh, and this is you. You're a Bills guy saying this about a Patriots guy, so you
Yeah,
must
I'm not
really
I'm
like
not
them.
happy. I
So,
hope you're right.
right, yeah. So
Trust
this
me, I
is
hope you're right. I mean, I
high
just
praise. Yeah, that's what I'm pointing out here. That's very high praise from you. So I will take that into account, and maybe I'll try to pick up a couple more shares of him in some future rookie drafts and trades. And then at tight end, obviously you had Loveland and Warren. Identical ADPs, 109. The FFPC is a tight end premium format, but even in a couple of non-tight end premium leagues I was in, they went in the first round. Identical ADPs in my drafts. I think I saw Loveland go ahead of Warren more often, but they were very, very close. Well, once again, do you have a preference between these two?
probably it's really tough. I don't know that one X the other out. I think you can make cases for both, but if I had to, I would probably go Loveland here, and it's only because I think, they're gonna do a lot of two tight end sets. There's Cole Kmet here, but I think Loveland can really stretch the field. I think he's, the quarterback situation's a little bit better, a little bit more stable, even though it's not a sure thing yet. There's been a surefire investment, but it's not a sure thing yet. Think I'm probably going there. If Warren is used any way, shape, and form like he was used when he was at Penn State, then I'm going Warren, where he was fullback, running back, wide receiver, tight end. He was everything, right? I just don't know if that'll be the case, and I don't love the quarterback situation in Indianapolis. So I think that's why I'm probably edging Loveland up just a smidge here.
I am mostly 100% aligned with you there. It really is situational for me. I think the Bears have built something out. They used all those extra picks from the Panthers. They really worked on their line. They have a lot of weapons. You got to love, Ben Johnson's going to scheme it up. Whereas the Colts, one more bad season, they're blowing it up again, and they're starting from basically zero. I mean, they're going to have to go back to the drawing board on almost everything. They have some nice weapons there. You got Pittman, Downs. You hope AD Mitchell can come through. Now you draft Warren. You got Jonathan Taylor. There's something there, but it's really sketchy. This is another team, I think, being supported by the lousy division for the most part. They keep having dreams that they can, they win 10 games and there's a path to it. But I really don't trust it long term. So I'm also going with Loveland. I do like both prospects quite a bit, though. And then there was only one tight end going in round two on average, Mason Taylor to the Jets at 211. After that, you had Elijah Araujo went to the Seahawks on average 304. Harold Fannin went to Cleveland 307, and Terrace Ferguson to the Rams also 307. What do you think? Would you have rather paid up there for Mason Taylor in the mid to late second or gone with one of the other three?
To me, there's a little bit of a drop off here, so I would have paid up for Mason Taylor. Again, I hate it. It went to a division rival here, but love the pedigree. I thought he was fantastic at LSU. I know that, there's a lot of potential with him too. So I think he can grow into an even better player. I think it's worth paying up there. And I also think that he's going to get, he's going to be a piece in that offense early on.
Yeah, they need to get people out there. They need literal bodies, especially if Rodgers does sign with the Steelers and they trade away Lazard. Not like he's a lot, but they are really just hurting behind Garrett Wilson. Maybe they are going to use all three running backs that much. We will see. I wish I could have gotten more exposure to Taylor. He was the guy I kept targeting there, and he never seemed to go at 211 in any of my drafts. He was already off the board. So when I had to dip down, it's a weird thing because Arroyo could be kind of a splash guy, but I just don't trust the Seahawks tight ends, especially because they still have Noah Fant this year. They had AJ Barner they drafted last year. They're bringing him in, and it seems like a hot mess, but at least moving on from Lockett and Metcalf, you could see where some opportunity could come. Fannin looks like a fantastic prospect, but the Browns quarterback situation is beyond forked, and he's behind Njoku right now. So it's another one you have to have patience with. And Ferguson, same kind of thing. I like the long-term potential, but Tyler Higbee isn't going anywhere this year. They just imported Devontae Adams to go with Puka, so it's hard to see a major role out of the gate. So I think Mason Taylor was the play, but it definitely cost you a little bit extra than the other three.
Completely agree.
Yeah, and the tight end premium, and especially right now, we always talk about it. It seems like all these good tight ends are coming into the league, yet there's a major shortage once you get outside of the top 6 or 7. So, hopefully your guy, Dalton Kincaid, can have a little bounce back year here, add to the numbers. We would like that. Let's get into a little trade talk here, a little grade the trade, few trades from our leagues. Just gonna, just get a basic idea. It's obviously going to be much better to evaluate these a couple years after the fact, but we want instant gratification because we are Americans and it's our right. So that's what we're going to do. JBG, this is one of our leagues. We talked about it on the show. We pulled the trigger. We traded away the 1.01 in a super flex league. This is actually FFP Triflex League. So it's a much deeper league than their usual leagues. We traded the 101 and the 301 for the 102, the 108, and the 202. So it wound up being technically Janty in blue for Omarion Hampton, Judkins, and Luther Burden, although there was another trade involved in the back end of that. So we'll kind of tie it in there because then we traded the 201, which wound up being Caleb Johnson, 308 wound up being Tyler Show, and the 401, which wound up being Russell Wilson, for the 110, which wound up being RJ Harvey, and the 410, which wound up being Ty Felton, which we traded away. So what do you think of that haul? Did we get enough? We came off of Janty, but walked away with Hampton, Judkins, and RJ Harvey. Is the 3 running backs enough to catch up to the gap here between Janty?
100%. Because I don't know that there's going to be that huge of a disparity between Genty and Hampton as is. And if Judkins can hit, man, and then Harvey, like I think we got 3 legitimate stars for the price of 1. So I'm 2, maybe 2.5 legitimate stars for the price of 1. I absolutely think that was a win.
So, F to A plus, what are you going with? We'll do it old school report card style. I'm going to give this one a solid A minus with room to grow, just in case Janty is like the super duper uber superstar. You do have that tiny bit of risk that would give me the buyer's remorse because if he's like that, you can never trade for those dudes, and this is your only chance to get them. But I am very confident in the returns. I'm going to A minus. How about yourself?
Yeah, I'm going A. I'm going a solid A across the board.
We like that too. We like that. A little bit of confidence there. Next up, this is FFPC, one quarterback season long. Gave up the 107 to 112, wound up being Colston Loveland, the tight end, Matthew Golden, the wide receiver, to get Travion Henderson and Byshell Tootin at the 205. Henderson was already off the board. What do you think of this one, giving up Loveland and Golden for Henderson and Tootin?
Well, yeah, man, honestly, it depends. I mean, if you're a tight end needy team, then I think you probably maybe it doesn't make as much sense. But for me, I think there's Trayvon Henderson is going to be he's going to be a name people know and people want, and he's going to get a lot of looks in that Mike Vrabel led Patriots offense. I absolutely love that. I think that's as good as a lot of the other running backs that went ahead of him. And then to get Tootin here, Matthew Golden concerns me. So I think that this is a pretty good trade here, man. I'm going to give this one a B plus.
I'm going to also go with a B plus. This was one of my leagues, and I have 8 chan at running back and basically nothing else, but I'm stacked at wide receiver and pretty solid at tight end. And Henderson actually got drafted. I kept trying to trade up. And so when I went on the clock at 107, I kind of just made one more chance. Most people don't try once a dude gets drafted, they quit trying to trade for him. But I kept going and managed to pull it off here. Really needed some depth at running back. So even if I overpaid by a touch, I don't mind here because this is a team that's, knock on wood, I think won this league 3 years in a row, or it's at least 2 of the 3. So, trying to get some youth in there while kind of keeping it going. Trade number 4, also FFPC, one quarterback season long, gave up the 104 and the 212, wound up being Henderson and Jack back to get the 102 and the 402, Omarion Hampton, Ollie Gordon. This is one of our leagues, another trade we had talked about doing. We're absolutely stacked at wide receiver in this league, and our worry was at 104, we were going to be looking at getting Hunter or McMillan, which is fine, but we're legitimately 6 or 7 deep at wide receiver. So we said, all right, we'll try to move up to 2 or 3, made offers for both, wound up getting up to the 102, basically at the cost from dropping from 212 to 402, which I think is pretty much nothing. Yeah, you could say Henderson fell there, so we could have just stayed put and had the 212. So given that, I'm going to go with an A minus here. That's a slight knock because I probably would have been okay, but we were worried that we were going to have to take another wide receiver there to get good value. So that's why it gets an A minus for me. How about yourself?
Yeah, I'm gonna stick with the B plus here with this one. I think it's a good trade, knowing what we know now, but hindsight's always 2020. But yeah, I think this is great. And there's never a universe where I'm gonna complain about a Hampton in a a Jim Harbaugh led offense. So that's just not those two things, they go good together. And I think Ollie Gordon's really solid depth here too, in the fourth.
Yeah, we didn't need to add a lot to this team. We actually added a lot of future picks with us. We also have Trey McBride and Hawkinson at tight end, so we didn't really need Loveland or Warren either. So it just really made sense to try to get one of those top running backs. So I think that was well worth it. Here's a pretty simple one here. Trade number 5, also FFPC, one quarterback season long. Gave away Isaiah Pacheco, got the 204, turned it into Cam Scatterbo. What do you like on that one for a grade?
I absolutely love this. I mean, Isaiah Pacheco, you don't know, maybe one more season. I mean, you have no idea his future there. He is not like lock stocked. He's gonna be their guy for the next 5 years. Cam Scatterbo, I absolutely would take that in a heartbeat. That is to me, this is an A plus all day.
Well, I'll take that because this was one of mine, and I will also give it an A. I wanted to move up, but this was a case I'd already kind of burned some capital elsewhere, and so I don't remember why. I think the dude just had a bunch of Chiefs on his teams or something. I'm like, you know what? You miss 100% of the shots you don't take, right? So I just offered him Pacheco, and I could not run fast enough to make that selection there. Like I said, it was hard to get up into that early part of the second round. So I am also giving that one an A. Trade 6, also one quarterback season long, gave up Marvin Mims, Jalen McMillan, and the 312. So a couple young wide receivers. 312 wound up being Jarquez Hunter. Got the 202, turned it into Jaden Higgins. I'm going to give this one just a B. I might have overpaid a touch, but again, this was one of my rosters, and I knew where I had the depth, and I was trying to get younger here. I also had Godwin as well, and I didn't want to just get bogged down with Bucks wide receivers. Dude had Bo Nix, so maybe paid a little bit too much to move up there, but I also saw Marvin Mims going in the 5th and 6th round, so I think his value was all over the place. McMillan's worth more of a third now that they drafted Ibuka, so I'm definitely okay with this one. I'll give this one another solid B again. Really, really like the Jaden Higgins. How about yourself? Grade the trade.
Yeah, I really like it too. I'm gonna give this a just given all the points made about it, I'll give this one a B minus.
Yeah, again, I wanted to move up here for him, and I had, limited options kind of in terms of the draft picks I could expend at this point. So I had to do the Jurassic Park thing and find a way. And then in the same league, actually, that same thing, one quarterback season long, gave up the 206, 212, and the 412. Jack Beck, Justin Fields, Austin Eckler, got the 204, 304, 504, Bashan Tootin, Jaden Blue, and then 504 was Theo Johnson, but I traded that one away. A big fan of the way this one worked out. I had no interest in Beck, Fields, or Eckler. Already had Joe Burrow, so I'm going to give this one an A minus for myself. Also had the Travis Etienne and Tank Bigsby, so this way at least I locked down the Jaguars backfield. Jamie G, what do you got for this one?
Yeah, this I think this is a solid A minus, man. I mean, Austin Eckler produced last year, but like you said, that's a those are 1 year propositions and they're risky. I don't really have a ton of interest in Beck or Fields either. So I do think that I could see where somebody values Fields, and that's okay. But I think you got the better of it here. I'm going A minus.
What's wild is in this draft, I think I also got Genty and Travis Hunter. So it was, I think it was a good one for there. We got another combo meal, trades 8 and 9. This is a team we co-own, FFPC Superflex Best Ball. In the first deal, we gave up the 205 and the 306, wound up being Luther Burden and Zach Ertz. I will note in a separate deal, we actually reacquired the 205, so we still got Luther Burton at the end of the day. And we got the 111 for that, which wound up being Quinton Judkins, but we were on the clock at the 111. Dude kept making offers, so we dropped back from the 111, which was Judkins, to the 112 and got RJ Harvey and a second round pick for our trouble. So at the end of the day, we still walk away with RJ Harvey, a second, and Luther Burden. So I'm going to give this one probably an A plus, dude. I was very. This was a lot of moving around the board in this draft, but I am extremely happy with the way it worked out.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I'm giving it a solid A right across the board. This was really good. I mean, this is multiple things that are happening here. And I think the gets were really good. I mean, I'm not that mad about what was given up here. I think the gets outweigh it by a lot. This is an A all day.
Yeah, the giveaway was basically like Zach Ertz, Judkins, and like a random mid-round third or something like that at the end of the day. So I was very, very happy with how that went down. And here's one again, one of my leagues gave up the 201, 401, 405, 501. The main piece in that being Bayshaw Tutton, Taj Brooks, Jatavian Sanders, and Kyle Monangai were the main parts there. But got the 205, 209, 509 wound up being Jaden Higgins, Devin Neal, running back, and went to the Saints. And then the 509 was Calvin Austin, but traded that one away. So basically, all I really care about is I gave up Tutton for Higgins and Neal. I'm quite happy with that. So I am going to give this one a B plus. How about yourself?
Yeah, I'm really happy with this one. I mean, when you look at it here, the gets and considering what was needed, and you got rid of some stuff. I mean, that might not even make your team. I'm this is a B plus for me.
We like that. And then one final trade here, FFPC season long super flex. And for context, this is one of my leagues that I already have Trey McBride and Mark Andrews. Gave up the 212, 412, and 2026 fifth and sixth round picks that want to be in Mason Taylor and Eckler at the 212 and 412. And I got 2026 second and third round picks. What do you think of that one? This is a league where again, tight roster spots, trying to create some draft capital in the future. Didn't really like my options at 212, Mason Taylor being the best player, and I had no need at tight end. So guaranteed to get a better second round pick next year. It could be as good as the first, could want to be in the 12 next year. So for that, I'm just going to go straight B because there is some downside with the upside here, but the upside could be very, very useful in kind of restacking this roster with some Utes. How about yourself, man? One final grade.
There's a little bit of risk here. I mean, you gave up what ended up being, but again, not needing Mason Taylor, I think makes this a little bit better for me. I'm gonna go with B minus.
He goes with a B minus. And let's finally, I lied a little bit. I said final grade, but let's do a little ahead of the class here before we get out of here and just look at the teams we talked about going into the draft. We had 4 teams and we are like, all right, here's kind of what we want to accomplish. So now that the drafts are over, just going to real quick be like, here's what we did with our picks. We had basically at least our own picks in all 7 rounds of these drafts. Actually, it was 10 rounds in the best ball leagues. We also had some additional picks in the first team FFPC season long. We wound up getting Amarian Hampton, DJ Giddens, Ollie Gordon, the Chargers D, Jalen Lane, and additional picks in 2026 in the first, second, third, and fifth rounds. So Hampton, Giddens, Gordon's, and a whole bunch of draft picks, almost an additional draft class. For me, I think that is a solid A. Again, this is a team that won the title last year, and we're just trying to get the perpetual reloading thing going on, and I think we're well on our way. Well, great for this class.
Yeah, this is an A all day. The fact that we picked up an extra first, second, third, and fifth for next year, added an absolute what we believe to be a stud at the running back position in an offense that we saw what they could do last year running the football, and got some additional depth there. I'm really happy with this. This is an A.
We like that. That's a good start. Team number 2, FFPC, season long super flex. Once again, I think we had an additional first. All of our picks added RJ Harvey, Jackson Dart, Bayshaw Tutton, Dylan Sampson, Jarquez Hunter, Brashard Smith, Wandale Robinson, Mason Rudolph. Could not add any additional future draft capital, but we wanted to come out of here maybe building up some running back depth and adding another quarterback. Managed to do all of that. Didn't quite get any home runs, but did get Brashard Smith and Jarquez Hunter a little bit late in the draft. So I think this is a solid B plus. How about yourself?
Yeah, it's absolutely a solid B plus here. And when you look at it, I think it's a B plus that could turn into an A minus over the next season here, depending on what happens with some of these guys. So I think it's a B plus with upside.
Yeah, Dart's really the main wild card here. If he absolutely hits, this is a super flex league where we only have Mahomes and Tua. We've really been struggling for that third option for a while, so that would really help out, especially given the kind of precarious nature of Tua's health.
Well, that and if Mason Rudolph ends up being a starter for 15 of the weeks, maybe has one of those games where he rushes for 2 touchdowns, throws for one or two, maybe there's some value there that we can get, to use him to get back. So I think it's got potential.
Won a couple bucks on DraftKings last year with Mason Rudolph when he was on the Titans, so I am certainly not against it. Team number three, FFPC Super Flex Best Ball. We had a couple extra picks. I think we had an extra second and an extra first here. Wound up walking away with a haul. Tetaroya McMillan, Travis Hunter, RJ Harvey, Luther Burden, Jaden Higgins, Jalen Monroe, Jarquez Hunter, Jalen Lane, Isaiah Davis, Tyler Higbee, Jalen Polk, and extra picks in the second and third round next year. JBG, we needed to rebuild our wide receiver core. We came away with McMillan, Hunter, Burden, and Higgins, and still managed to get RJ Harvey and Jarquez Hunter, and threw in Jalen Monroe for good measure, and second and third round picks next year. I am going to go. Yeah, I'm gonna take the A plus on this one, dude.
Yeah, this is an A plus. I mean, look how just the top heavy. You got, the top two wide receivers. You got, one of the top three or four running backs here. Some real upside with Higgins and Milrow and Burden. This is a really good draft, man, and picked up some capital for next year. Yeah, I'm agreeing with you.
Looks like we're getting that one on the right track. And then finally, team number four, FFPC Triflex. So this is Super Flex Plus. There's an additional flex and an additional wide receiver every week. So a lot of weeks you're starting 2 quarterbacks and 5 wide receivers. We walked away with Omarion Hampton, Quinshawn Judkins, RJ Harvey, Jaden Higgins, Cam Scatterbo, Kenny Pickett, Roman Wilson, and additional picks in the third and fourth round last year. This is the team where we traded down from the 101. A little bit nervous about that still, so I'm only going to go with an A instead of an A plus because perhaps it still could come back to bite us, but we needed this kind of haul to be competitive both this year and long term. We got it. That was the goal going into the draft. We accomplished the goal. I think that's worth an A. How about yourself?
Yeah, it's absolutely worth an A, and we did exactly what we wanted to do here. It's hard for me to poke too many holes here. Yeah, A all day.
I mean, we had Bucky Irving at running back, and then our RB2 was Tajay Spears. So we really needed some depth there, and walking in with Hampton, Judkins, and Harvey, and Scattaboo. Not to add to Bucky Irving, and theoretically, we only need to find 2 starters out of those guys every week. I think we're in business.
Yeah, I think so too, man. That's a job well done. And Mills, I think that about does it for this initial look at our rookie drafts. We got a lot more to talk about with the schedule dropping and the startup draft season kicking off. Mills, anything else on this one before we get out of here?
Not really. Just amazed me how excited I got for football. All of a sudden, there's so many other sports going on right now. I mean, you even have golf and horse racing and draft lotteries and hockey playoffs and basketball playoffs and baseball, and it just doesn't stop. And yet, I just started doing these rookie drafts. It was hard to think about anything else other than football especially that week. And looking forward to staggering some more rookie drafts throughout the season and getting into a couple startups because I always say I own too many leagues, and then I get in more leagues because that's what we do because it's fun.
That is one of the problems.
Yeah, it's also a problem. Yeah, it's fun, but it's also a problem.
It's a fun problem.
As long as you're winning money, it's fine. But yeah, it's
May all your
not gonna
problems
win.
be fun.
And profitable.
and profitable. Thank you guys for checking out another episode of Nine Guys Dynasty. If you made it this far, go ahead and throw the thumb, like, and subscribe. We'll be doing a bunch of these as we make our way through the off season. And just know, 3-4 months, it'll be regular season time, and we'll be doing a bunch of it as well. Let us know how your drafts went. What are you doing this offseason? Any favorite trades? Hit us up. Either drop a comment below, or Mills will let you know where you can find our social medias, and you're always welcome to slide in these DMs.
Yes, you are. Hit us up with the trade talk. It's that time of year. We're going into a little bit of lull until training camps, but this is now the time to strike. Be the one out there, being active. We'll be here to help you out. Thanks again for checking out Nine Guys Dynasty, presented by Seize the Gap Fantasy Football. You can find us wherever you get your pods and on YouTube, on social media at Seize the Gap FF, and on the web at seizethegapff.com. Very simple, very easy to remember, just like those flaps. FLAPS. Very, very crucial to our success. Follow, like, and please subscribe. If you had fun, remember to hit the thumb. I'm Mike Mills. That's Jamie G. We'll see you next time on Nine Guys Dynasty.